Hi, everyone. This is Dana Williams here to tell you all about my new podcast, Dominate Your Day. If you're familiar with the Strengths Journal or my business, Dana Williams Co., then you know what we mean by dominate your day. And for all of our new followers, the concept Dominate Your Day is about living intentionally and with purpose through the lens of your unique talents. We start with the foundation of Gallup's Clifton Strengths to discover your innate talents, and then we help you design a life you love through the lens of your unique strengths. Believe me, I know what it's like to feel stuck. I've spent too many of my own days managing my life from someone else's perspective. It's exhausting, and not in a good way. I wanted to find a new way to approach life, a way that propelled me to actually accomplish what I wanted to do, and in a way that was authentic to me. Once I discovered my Clifton strengths and designed my life based on my innate talents, everything changed. If you're stuck, we're here to help you move out of that feeling unproductive, frustrated, and like you're not making moves on your goals, and into a space of living intentionally with energy and purpose, making each day count. I will be interviewing a variety of guests from all facets of life, bringing you practical advice on how to build a productive and fulfilling life. Our guests will share insightful ideas, new tools, experiences, and relatable stories that will help you design a life you love too. We know you all lead very busy lives, and our episodes will always be short and sweet, informal and focused on developing you. Take a moment to subscribe to Dominate Your Day, wherever you listen to podcasts today, so you're ready to listen in on life-changing stories. We can't wait to bring you exactly what you need to dominate your day. So, Vanessa, we're so glad to have you. I'm just loving having you here today because you have such energy and such spunk, and you are just the epitome of going through challenges and getting on the other side of them and using your strength. So, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the audience where you are right now and what's going on? Let's just go for it, girl.
Well, I'm Vanessa Peace, and Dana has been a longtime leader and mentor to me. So I'm so grateful to have you in my life, and I'm so excited about this podcast and about the journal, which I have right here because I just love it so much. And I got it for all my teams. So right now I'm in my home in Ovilla, Texas, so about 25 miles south of Dallas, and I've been home a lot lately, like many of you listeners, I'm sure. The pandemic has meant that, it's forced me to work within the home, and I had my children virtual schooling for a long time. They finally just went back, and I'm just, learning every day to be a better version of myself. And definitely your journal has helped. And I'm a huge supporter of the Strengths Finder model, and I've been using it for a long time. So I'm excited to talk today about just being a woman in business and, following our hearts and our minds.
Well, I love that. I think for those of you who don't know Vanessa, or you probably have somebody in your life like this, but she was the light when I walked into the office every day, always figuring out a better way to do things. So talk to the audience about your career. When I first met you, you had come in on the ad team. We were on the ad team together.
That's right.
And then kind of worked your way up and kind of moved around. So talk about your career and where you've been and where you are now.
That's awesome. Well, I guess I'll start from the beginning where I was a bit of a atypical, unusual, maybe a bit eclectic young lady. And I did not take the traditional college path. In fact, I took the 20-year college path. But through it all, I had, I worked in Montreal. I should say I come from Montreal. I'm Canadian and now American. And I worked as a street marketer while I also was working in restaurants and, serving customers and doing my own internal research of like marketable consumers. And so with time in Montreal, as I was taking, part-time studies, I found myself with a bunch of renegade, other like-minded people building a small business, which was a street marketing business. And then we also evolved it into a record label, French hip hop. So pretty unusual.
I don't think I knew that story, Vanessa.
I love that. Yeah.
I knew you met your husband at a concert, but I didn't know you were in the street. Oh my goodness.
Well, music is in my bones. Music is in my bones. Both my parents were musicians, so it's always been part of my ecosystem. So fast forward to, in the street marketing gig that I had created for myself, I got noticed by an advertising agency that we were actually, creating marketing for. And so they were my client, and eventually they hired me on. So McCann Erickson is one of the larger, ad agency conglomerates. And so the Montreal arm of that is Marketel. So I worked at Marketel for about 3.5 years, and I started from the bottom as a coordinator, serving coffee and doing photocopies, because at the time we used to photocopy everything, all the way to being an account executive on the Air Canada account. So that was
Wow.
the national airline there, which was awesome and fascinating. And I grew in so many different ways. And then fast forward to then moving to the client side, where I got to work on the Air Canada brand. And there I worked on the advertising team and the sponsorship team. And it's really where I learned the business of branding. At the time where I was at Air Canada, the airline had just filed for bankruptcy and were in the instances of rebranding. And so
Mm.
I got a little seat at the table while we were rebranding the airline, and just became very passionate about that the idea of building relationships with consumers as a brand. And travel was just so obviously, sexy and luxurious, but also really necessary. And so I found great pleasure in doing that. And then meet my husband at the jazz festival. And my husband is a Texan. His name is Mike, a wonderful gentleman, and he wooed me. The southern charm got the Montreal girl out of Montreal, and I moved here for love, and not really knowing what my work experience would be worth here. And so I started to just, apply to some jobs. And what I did is I researched all the Fortune 500 companies in the area in North Texas, and I went to so many interviews, and eventually kind of it wasn't clicking. I wasn't finding the right fit. And so I kind of put that to the side and became pregnant with our firstborn, Gabriella, who's the light of our life. And right at that moment, I got a call from this airline that I had applied very many months ago, calling me back for a new round of interviews for a different position. And this time it was for advertising, where I got to meet my mentor at the time, who was my leader, Dana.
Wow.
Loved my time at Southwest Airlines. Never thought I would leave Southwest, to be honest. I had the opportunity of working on advertising campaigns, and then that role blossomed into leading the brand. So, fun fact, there was no brand team at Southwest when I
Mhm.
started. The brand had just been homegrown from the culture into this external facing relationship with the consumers. And so I had seen an opportunity to create more consistency, at least at first through the visual articulation of the brand. And so I raised my hand and asked for that opportunity, and it was handed to me, thank goodness, because then the rest is history for me. So I had the rare and amazing privilege of getting to rebrand the airline with others, of course, at Southwest. And it was truly the pinnacle of my career, I think. I never want to work that hard again, but I will always cherish the really 4.5 years that it took, from being a secret project all the way to seeing that first aircraft come with that beautiful heart on the belly. And so everything from the peanut packs to the colors of the aircraft, I got to put my hands on all of it, and I really poured my heart and soul into it with so many others within this amazing company. And so I really had my whole spirit and my soul, my mind was completely connected to the Southwest culture, and I truly thought I would just continue my career there
Mm.
forever. And then, by all kinds of different relationships that I'd had in the past, I had this amazing opportunity, equally amazing opportunity, to join AT&T. And to me, that was like super scary, going from this beloved airline where there was roughly around 50,000 employees at the time, to this huge Fortune 4 or Fortune 3, whatever they are now, organization with over 280,000 employees. I felt like the tiniest fish in an ocean. And for some reason, my heart led me to take that risk. And I did. And I left my beloved family and friends at Southwest Airlines, where I had really grown to be just so loved by so many people, and loving so much the culture and the folks I worked with. And then being this new lady who had a lot to prove in this really, really big corporate environment. And
I want to stop you right there because I think there was a
Please.
lot that happened
That's
in
a
your career.
lot. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, from the time you moved to Texas and then you had to meet all new people, not only getting married, having a
Yes,
baby, but you had a child with special needs during that
I
time.
did.
And
I
I
did.
remember those days and working through that and
Yes.
how you worked through that as a working mom and managing all of that and celebrating these iconic moments. So let's just take a moment and say,
I warned you.
wow. Yeah,
I
wow.
warned you. I'll go
Wow.
off. Well,
Well,
I'm glad.
no, but and let's talk about your strengths. So tell everybody your top 5 strengths because you guys are going to hear these as she talks, but you
I love
probably heard
that.
some of them during that time.
Well, it's a great place for us to stop. You're
Yeah.
right, because becoming a mother in the midst of building a career is just challenging enough, right? So I should say I have 2 children. Gabriella's
Yeah.
now 12. She's
Yeah.
12, and Preston is 9. And what's unique about, can you believe it?
No, I
Exactly.
can't
And
believe he's
I
9.
had both of them while I was at Southwest with Dana as my
That's
leader.
so
So
fun.
it was amazing. But I'll stop and say I'm going to read them in order. My top 5 are communication, woo, achiever, activator, and positivity. And
Wow.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
so embrace that 5 dynamic 5. Only that the more I became comfortable with these being my strengths, and the more I stopped beating myself up about the other strengths that I might not be as effective in, and I could really start to utilize these 5 strengths as my resource. The more I feel like I became efficient as a person, more productive, and more
Mm.
goal oriented, right? And
Yeah.
more focused on the big picture, not just what was in front of me. And so one of the biggest life changing moments for me and for my family is that my little girl was diagnosed, in my time at Southwest Airlines, was diagnosed with Rett syndrome. And Rett syndrome is a rare neurological disorder, and it impacts mostly young girls, baby girls. And so she was born perfectly typical little beautiful bouncy baby. And then within the first 7, 8 months, she started to show signs of regression, which is classic and typical for this disorder. And then all my mommy flags were raised, and was really very scared, and it was a difficult time. And I'm so grateful that I had my career and I had my colleagues who were so supportive, because quite frankly, when I think back at the woman I was then, first of all, I had no idea of all my strengths, and I felt like I was drowning. But somehow, with the help of people and with the help of my own strengths, and of course my supportive husband and family, we got through the first phases of her being diagnosed, and we call it the D-Day. But diagnosis is
Mm-hmm.
difficult, when, as a parent, you know that something's not right with your child. It creates a lot of anxiety and fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get the diagnoses, which not all families are fortunate enough to have, many disabled and special needs children continue to not be diagnosed. But when you get that diagnosis, it puts a label,
Mm-hmm.
and for good and for bad, a label in that you have now the medical resources and advanced science and literature and other families that you can turn to and lean into for support, and at the very least an understanding of the road ahead. But then the bad is that once you get that label, and I think that also of special needs, just being a special needs mom, and putting that in
Mm-hmm.
quote because I often use that to describe myself as a mother, that special needs label, it's charged because it creates this sentiment that you're different and you're other,
Mm-hmm.
and that otherness sometimes can feel isolating, right? And
Yeah.
so fortunately, my positivity kicked in high gear when Ella was first diagnosed. And I guess also my strength of communication, which was
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't just bottle it up. I found an approach and a way for me to communicate openly what was happening without
Mm-hmm.
being overly dramatic. Well, maybe sometimes I might have been, but I really tried to communicate, which ended up being very therapeutic for me. And in doing so, I also started to reach out to, past my colleagues and family, and towards other families who were similar to ours. And that's when I became the representative for the North Texas region for RhettSyndrome.org, where we started to do fundraising, and over the years, we've probably raised about $25,000. And so, it was for me, again, positivity was that I knew that there would be light at the end of the tunnels that we were walking through. And Lord knows there were many, many tunnels. It seemed endless, the appointments and if I have to fill another medical form again, I'm just going to scream because there's just so many medical forms, and so many times you have to retell the story of her development and her birth and her weight and all of that. But with positivity, it was like each step we took felt like, okay, we're moving in the right direction. And then I guess my activator for sure, and my achiever kicked into gear, where I started to like use the information that I was learning about my own child and about my own family and the impact that Rhett syndrome has had on us. And I was able to then start to reach out and help other families, and then reach out further and get people interested in us as Rhett families, which is what we often call ourselves, so that there could be some fundraising that comes from it, where we could start helping other families and also help support the needs of the research. So it's been a fascinating journey, this whole part. Yeah.
And watching you on the journey, I mean, it's just like, wow. I think I came out to one of your fundraisers for Rhett syndrome one time.
Yes.
And I know you've been doing that for now, what? A long time.
A long time.
But you started that, didn't you? You started the strollathon
in North Texas. We didn't have that here. Yep.
So you did that while you were creating these iconic branding moments at Southwest Airlines, while you were also having another child, and then thinking about your career. And it was like, wow. One thing I do know about you that the audience might not know is you're very organized too. And I think that helped a lot. But I love how you use your communication talents and your positivity to get you through that time, but how you seem to balance it all, even though I know that's not the word we use today, because nobody can balance like we can't.
Yeah.
But before we move to this next chapter, what's the advice you give new moms now when they call you and they're getting that diagnosis? What do you tell them? How do you encourage them? Is there something that you learned or that somebody gave you when you were going through those early days?
I think that as moms, and I think women in general, we feel like we have to be superheroes and do it all on our own. And one thing that, sadly, I think when I think back of just, my mental health at the time, I wasn't aware that I was just, yes, I was using my communication and I was communicating what was happening, but people would offer to help, and I had no idea how to ask for help or what they could help in. And, in retrospect, I recognize now that it was just not embedded in me to ask for help. Like I had to be having it all under control, and I was going to be fine, and we were going to be fine. And one of the biggest, things that I tell newly diagnosed special needs families is, you're going to need help. It's not if you need help, I'm here. You are going to be needing help. And the biggest thing is acknowledging that. For me, it has been anyways, acknowledging that it's necessary. We need the village. And, by proxy now, our village has grown. Our neighbors are involved in Ella and Preston's life. Our family, of course, my coworkers, everywhere I work. Even in interviewing for new positions, I immediately speak to the fact that my family dynamic is a little bit unique, in that I might be called at the last second that my child has a seizure and she's in an ambulance. And so that's going to be what I do. I'm going to run out of this conference room and go to her. And so being open and transparent about what my needs are has really helped, not only just me personally with the friends and the nurse, all the help that we've been able to receive, but even professionally, as I've grown my own career and continued to grow in spite of, right?
And I love the fact that you've built your career while you were building your family and creating, even through obstacles.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of this. Here comes this opportunity at AT&T to build and tell us about that. This was a great opportunity for you to come in at a different role, right?
Yes. Yeah. So this was an opportunity for me to go and lead a brand team for an extremely large company, which was much more complex than I even gave it credit for when I started, quite frankly. And so the thing about having been in airline for a long time, I'd grown up with Air Canada and then Southwest Airlines, I really felt strongly that I understood that audience and that consumer. And as a marketer and as a brand agent, that was so important to my role. And then fast forward to this AT&T opportunity where I took a risk. I went into this giant ocean, and then, wanted to quickly prove that I could help, and that I could help with the branding, and then, probably stumbled a couple of times. And I think that one of the best, lessons I've taken back from my time in such a ginormous organization was that whenever you start anything new, you owe yourself and those around you to take a moment to truly listen and
Mm-hmm.
understand. Everywhere you're going to go, there'll be a different culture. There's going to be a different way people do things. There's a different set of expectations. And you can't just take what you brought with you and just assume that that's naturally going to fit. You also have to learn the environment you're now in so that you can
Mm-hmm.
be respectful of those and not push your ideas and thoughts onto them. And so that was really a great recognition. I thought, I'd been brought up in the best culture. Southwest Airlines is known for their corporate culture. And so I brought all of that with me. And I was almost frustrated sometimes that in this large corporation, things weren't as close and people weren't as, intuitively connected personally. And quickly realized that was right for Southwest Airlines. And AT&T has
Mm-hmm.
figured it out also. They're an over 100-year-old company, right? And so uh, started to realize I had to pause and listen and take in my environment and learn from those who'd been there for a very long time. And then I ended up loving my time there. And once again, finding myself thinking, I'm never going to leave AT&T. Growth opportunities all around me, exceptionally smart, really brilliant minds. Telecom is just this really interesting, industry that's ever changing. You can never put your finger down on what the audience is going to expect today because it's changing constantly, right? We've all got these things here, but then we're consuming content on our televisions, on our screens through social channels. And the power of telecom, and at the time where I was there, the bridging of entertainment and telecom was so fascinating to me. So quick story, within the first 6 months of me joining AT&T, AT&T was acquiring what was then called Time Warner.
Oh,
So
that's right. Oh my God.
CNN,
Yeah.
HBO, Cartoon Network, and so many other channels. So here I come once again at this amazing time where I got to participate in the rebranding of this Time Warner company, now called Warner Media. So again, fascinating brand work. And then I got to work with some of the best brand strategists. I mean, my boss at the time, he's built huge brands all over Microsoft. And I mean, there's too many to name, and it would embarrass him if I did, but, got to learn so much about the business of branding with him. Amazing brand strategists that I got to partner with on that kind of work. So it was a great move for me in retrospect. Again, I never thought I would leave Southwest Airlines. I was so happy there and I loved my career there, and then took a giant risk and it paid off because AT&T taught me so much more about large corporations and organizing big teams and organizing ever changing market trends. And so but then again, I got something, something came to get me again. So a recruitment agency had reached out with this position and I read it and at first thought, I don't want to leave AT&T. I have such a great gig. Why would I do that? I'd finally been there 3.5 years. It finally taken me that long to get my good footing. And I felt like I was really, getting my stride and making impactful work there and influencing. And you know, this new opportunity came into my lap. And the more I read the job description and I tried to dismiss it, the more I was getting butterflies in my stomach. And it was just kept calling me. And funny, like I let my husband and my mom both read the job description. I was like, why am I so bothered by that? And they both read it and said, because this is the job you're supposed to be doing.
Oh,
And
wow.
so went through that whole process. And now I'm at Children's Health and I'm the vice president of the marketing department. And I find myself just so giddy and so grateful. And I'll use the word, I am so blessed that my professional passion of marketing and branding and all things digital marketing, is now completely aligned with my personal passion of being an advocate for families with children who are ill or have special needs like my little Ella does. And so, it's very rewarding. And through it all, I'll say that really I just followed my gut, and there was a lot of luck involved and a lot of great relationships I'd made that have led me from one step to the next to the next.
I love that. I think there's a lot of lessons in leadership here. I think when we look back at the AT&T, I remember you telling me that you got excited because you were helping with some building culture there and helping with that. So you
Yes.
kind of brought some of that, you bring that with you. And I think so much right now we talk about building personal brand and how important personal brand is, because you take that with you wherever you go. It's not the company, you bring that company brand, but it's that personal brand.
So
So
true.
talk a little bit about how you took that step of risk going to AT&T and then also going to Children's Health. Both of those were big steps. What did you use to power through? Because sometimes I think when we're walking in courage, it's like taking a risk, but we always grow from it, right?
Yeah.
We always grow when we step into that fear.
Yeah.
So what kind of catapulted you into both of those situations and helped you? What do you think that was? Could have been something in your strengths. It could have been your achiever. I don't know. A little bit of.
And I mean, it probably, even if you look back, immigrating from Canada to Texas for love was a huge risk, and I followed my heart there naturally, right? Because I ended up married with two beautiful children. So there's something, it might be my activator who's always just willing to just get things started and get things to change and get things to be improved. And also my positivity. I just feel I'm incredibly fortunate. My parents, I think that they instilled in my sisters, my brother and I, just this innate feeling that we'll always have a safety net because we always have family. And so to me, that almost meant like there's nothing too far out of reach because I can always fall back on my people, on my tribe. And then as I've grown, my tribe has gotten bigger so that I have people like you and colleagues from different organizations where I've worked that have made up this tribe. And I feel like then that just gives me the courage, because I heard you use that word and it's so true, the courage to take the leap to the next step. And even when I'm not feeling so sure about myself, there's always someone at that right time that texts me a nice little note to remind me I'm loved, or someone reaches out and, says, I'd love some mentorship from you. And I'm like, from me? Really? You want to be mentored by me? And that again, just fills my tank, I guess, and makes me feel that I can get to that next step. And the reality is, and I tell this to people I mentor too, when you start whatever journey you're on, you can have all kinds of plans about where you're going to land. But the reality is none of us ever know, because the beauty of the journey is that the only thing you can do is kind of set your sight in a general direction and then take one step at a time. And that's the same about parenting. That's the same about marriage. You can only do one day at a time. You can try to agonize over, when I make this change to this new job, will I be able to be as successful as the last job? Will my skills be applicable to this new role? Will I, get to carve my own space and leave a little bit of myself there? That can cause a lot of agony and angst. But if you're really sure of who you are fundamentally, and that you have a tribe and you have a net, and you're just, all you can do is the best you can do every day, just one day at a time, then to me, that's really the only way you get there. I think that's been for me. If there's a secret to success, it's just to take it one day at a time and to utilize my strengths and know that I'm well surrounded and well loved and supported, and keep moving forward. You just keep moving forward.
I love that. And I love that it's kind of catapulted you to keep trying, and you've created those opportunities for yourself, and you just keep trying and keep going. So where do you get your advice? I know you have different role models, but has there been a female, and I say female because Women's History Month this month, but is there a female role model that,
Yeah.
or several that you recall that have really poured into you or given you advice that has helped you as you've moved
Yeah.
along?
Yeah. I think that that's the beauty of, having the opportunity of building a career and moving around, is I've been influenced by so many powerful, inspirational women wherever I've gone. And I've always had the beautiful opportunity of them taking me under their wing. And I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
they always just, these godmothers, these fairy godmothers have just appeared in my life. But not just because I'm talking with you, Dana, but I used to frequently sit out on your couch in your office, and all of those deep conversations that we had, were really inspirational to me, because you showed me that you could bring your whole self to work, and
Mm-hmm.
you could just pour yourself and give of your every fiber, and leave a lasting impression in many, many people. And I have to credit, people like Colleen Barrett,
Mm-hmm.
right, and Teresa Laraba,
Mm-hmm.
who were, again, fairy godmothers in my life, who really showed me that you absolutely can come with all of your passion and your emotion, and it's okay to be sensitive, and it's okay to be, what classically, we would have termed as like an emotional woman, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you just bring your whole self, and then you tend to business, and you can be successful, and you can inspire, and you can influence. And so, it's hard to pick just one. To
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
point,
Several. Yeah.
so many
Several.
beautiful women, and I mean, I was raised by a really strong, single mom, and it always starts with our moms, right? And
Right.
mom's my best friend now, and we have the
I
best
love it.
relationship. And I can always know that no matter how bad I do, no matter if I fail this podcast horribly, I'll go there and she'll ask me, "How do you do?" And I'll tell her, and she'll say, "Let me hug you," right?
Oh,
So having the support of many great women, has been instrumental, I would say, to my career development, and to really then starting to carve out my own brand. What kind
yes.
of female leader do I want to be, and how do I then in turn inspire and influence and mentor other young men and women who want to also feel accomplished and move up in their career. So
I saw and heard from you a great tidbit that I think would be helpful for our audience, because talk about the fact that you were interviewing during COVID for this newest role,
yeah,
right? And you couldn't see
yeah,
your team, but yet you were
uh,
getting a team of 70 people or
yeah,
so. I
yeah.
was like, wow. How, and I know there's a lot of people moving around right now, and we're still kind of in this hybrid workspace. So what did you do to engage, and how did you manage that change?
So, going back to bringing your skill sets from your past experience and then
Yeah.
paying attention to the new environment that you're in, I brought with me from Southwest Airlines this understanding, this deep rooted feeling and knowledge that to get engaged employees, you actually have to engage with them. You have to
Yeah.
build a culture, and you have to be very clear about the culture, not just say, "Oh, we've got a great corporate culture," but actually define it. And so that's one of the first things I did when I joined. So, fun fact, I started April 27th, when the marketing team at Children's Health had just all been sent home about 3 weeks prior, and told, "You're just going to work virtually for now until we figure things out," right? And that's the truth for so many, um, folks now that are working from home. So I've never been, still to this day, in the same room as any of the people that I lead. And I have 6 direct reports, and between 65 with contractors, 65 to 70 employees. And so they've never been in the same room. I've never been in the same room. And so
Wow.
we've not been able to feel each other's energies. And so it was really important for me to, from the get-go, be very transparent about who I am, what my values are,
Mm-hmm.
and what I was coming to Children's Health for, and what I was hoping to accomplish with the help of the team. And so we built a culture newsletter. So I started, again, like by the time all the onboarding was completed, let's call it mid-May, I was starting to build my first Culture Corner newsletter, which is what we've affectionately called
and
it.
and nobody had done that before, right? You kind of
No one
came
had
in and
done
just
that
created
before.
that.
That's
Yeah.
right. So the Culture Corner newsletter, which is probably a little corny, but I decided that together we would have four pillars that would make up our marketing culture, which was to learn together, to collaborate together, to celebrate one another, and then to give back. And so those are our four pillars in every monthly Culture Corner. I am consistent with the four pillars, and then we start sharing things that we want to learn together. We have lunch and learn folks that come and speak from across the organization and outside the organization, and then we celebrate birthdays and we celebrate new babies and buying new homes, and then we give back together. And then the collaboration piece was really stemming from observations I'd made in my first 90 days as a leader there, which was that there was some really strong skill. I mean, I've got some really incredible marketers on my team, and yet the way they were operating was very much in silos. And so there was truly an official need for a deep collaboration. And so by building that into our culture and then celebrating each time there's a project that has shown great collaborative spirit, highlighting those moments that mattered where the collaboration and those connections happened. And so, we've been at it now, 10 months, and it's really taken
Amazing.
off. And I keep getting, a lot of great feedback from the team and even my colleagues outside of marketing who hear about it and say, my gosh, what a strange way to start during COVID when you're remote, but a great way to start to build rapport. And then I'll tell you that I've had to find clever ways. I did Zoom talks with every person on my team, and I did Zoom talks with every executive at Children's Health within the first, I would say, let's call it 4 months. So for 4 months, the wonderful lady Janice, who helps me make all these appointments, she was calling this my world tour, but it was a lot. It was daunting, but it was so important because we don't give enough credit to body language and being in each other's spaces, and how
Yeah.
important that is to building rapport. And I knew that I wanted to come in and influence and inspire, and even that I had to come in and create some change. We had a reorg in July. There was a great many things that I wanted to go and help operationalize for greater effective, marketing abilities. And so it's paid off, that one-on-one time I've had with a great many people, because it was my opportunity to really learn and understand the implications of what I was going to go and suggest in terms of making changes. So it's been a
I
great
love that.
journey. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Thank
think you
you.
encourage those making change right now that are going to be in that spot where they're going to have to connect with others. And really, I think being a mentor and finding those mentors and just reaching out like you reached out to people, just said, I'm here, I want to meet you. But one of the other things you told me that I thought was pretty special is how you didn't end your day without connecting with like two people each
Yeah.
day. That was a
Yeah.
little thing you
Yep.
gave
Yep.
yourself,
That's right.
probably a little
That's
bit of
right.
your communication and your
I think
achiever, like,
so.
okay, two a day, but
And
just
I
giving
think
yourself that framework, right? To
That's right.
connect.
And I think that even building culture has to be disciplined. I think that you have to
Absolutely.
plan that out. And like we talked about plans, you don't necessarily know where you're going to end up, but you have to have an intention. And so if my intention is to create collaboration, then I have to be the one to show what that looks like. If my intentions is to celebrate one another, then I have to show what that looks like. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, in the opportunities that I have through now, with this digital space, we've got Teams, we've got Microsoft Teams. So I Teams 2, 3, now sometimes it's 5, 6 people a day. Just, if they've passed my mind, I keep my org chart open all day long. And then, I might be touching something and I know that somebody worked on it and they're not presenting to me, but I'm going to ping them real quick and tell them, thank you for all the work you did on that. And it goes far along in that, because they don't get to see me and I don't get to see them, and we can't build that personal relationship, at least feeling appreciated or knowing that you're thought of, or knowing that that your work mattered. I think that goes a long way. And so again, things I've learned along the way, Southwest having such a huge influence on my love of leading people and building culture. And so I refine my tools and my tactics, but yeah, it's been
I
great to
love
connect
that.
that way.
Yeah, and I love how you've built on the culture you learned there, even coming from your first job in Canada and then all
Mhm.
the way through, but how you've gone in and created things and left them better than you found them each time. You really have. And I've seen that in all these iconic moments. So as you think back and you think about advice to new leaders or leaders that are just like you, that are transitioning from, people are moving around right now. So transitioning from one company to the next, what would be the three or two or three simple things that you would recommend? We heard some of the things you did, but what would be your advice to them right now as they're moving around?
Yeah. I'll start at the beginning by saying that even when I think back at serving coffee and photocopying countless
Photocopy.
remember that when we had to photocopy everything? And I remember being a coordinator at an advertising agency and being that person who had to spend the night photocopying a pitch for the ad agency. Um, and even there, I'm so grateful for all those moments because I had the foresight at the time to get myself a copy of everything I photocopied. And that's where I learned the business of advertising, right? And photocopy
Mm-hmm.
a copy of that budget and look at what things cost in the media, et cetera. And so I would say that from that experience, and you find that in every job,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what level, there's always these small jobs. And I would say that no job is too small, that there are lessons everywhere. You just
Mm-hmm.
have to be open and embrace every opportunity in your day, even on the tasks that I don't want to do, because I know they're going to either be boring or they're going to be political. Or when I push myself to finally get to that item on my list, there's always something I gain from it, whether it's something I learn about myself and my resilience or my ability to navigate something complicated or to actually sit through something boring without my mind wandering. But there's always a lesson.
Sure.
So that would be a big one for me. And then the other one, and back to those women who've inspired me that that we were talking about earlier, being kind and attentive costs nothing. And for
Mm.
some reason, sadly, too few people, prioritize being kind and attentive.
Mm-hmm.
And working in all types of organizations, politics can get thick, and
Yeah.
politics is almost like a way of saying that, as you progress through leadership, there's a lot of, push and pull and turmoil or misalignment, and it could become personal sometimes or feel personal
Mm-hmm.
at the least. But if you consider that people are people at every level, and just being kind and attentive, just as a human, never mind
Mm-hmm.
titles or never mind what we're misaligning on, it can go so far in just influencing and understanding each other, meeting halfway. And so I think that it's a funny thing to say in business, but being
Yeah.
kind is really undervalued, and is actually probably for me just an incredible currency.
I think I'm glad you brought that up because I think sometimes by taking time to get to know your people, like their strengths, getting to know, that's like really seeing how they're viewing the world,
Yes.
right? And being kind is just taking a moment to understand them and understand where they're coming from, as well as all the other things about bringing value and seeing people where they are at this moment in time and how you can help them.
Yeah.
So what do you think that you would say to the Vanessa that was 20 years old to the Vanessa now? What are the three things, the three big things you learned, or say, keep on doing this, sister? Or you know what?
Yes.
We learned that. And I mean, I think your positivity just shone through that time, but your younger self. And even I'm going to take you to your 90th birthday. What
Mm,
legacy do you want to leave?
wow.
It's your mom, it's your kids,
I love
it's
that.
it's all the people that you've touched with signs saying, "We love you, Vanessa." What does that look like? And what are you doing right now on your mission, your personal mission to get there?
That's
As you
wonderful.
think, as you think about where you've been, the little 20-year-old to where you are now, this
Yeah.
amazing leader, mom, advocate for children's health, wife, and then you're going to be, where you get to the 80s and 90s, and what is that legacy that you want
I
to
love
leave?
that. The 20-year-old self, the 20-year-old Vanessa, wouldn't have listened to anything I had to say because she was fearless and she was running in all kinds of directions. And she really didn't know what she was going to be when she grew up. Um, and she just wanted to have a good time. And I would say to her that keep that fearlessness,
Yeah.
keep
Great.
that fearlessness. But also, buckle up. It's going to be a ride. I would let her know that she might want to finish college a little sooner because instead of dropping out and traveling to Guatemala. But I teased because I was quite unruly as a young lady, but I guess I wouldn't change it, but I would definitely tell her, you keep that fearless spirit. It's going to pay off. And
And don't you
then
think parents that have kids that are like that right now, just tell them it's going to be okay because this is
it's
what's going
going
to
to
get
be
that girl to the
okay.
boardroom,
It's so true. You're absolutely right, because I do think that that's exactly what it is that self-confidence and that just innate knowledge that I can do
Yeah.
whatever. I'm going to make it through, even if I don't know what that looks like. Um, and then fast forward to, what I would say, to the 90-year-old me, or what I would hope that the 90-year-old me leaves, is just a legacy of being, I can't overstate, it's our motto in our home, kindness above all. Like that, no matter how successful, all that really doesn't matter. It's how you leave people feeling, I think. And so being kind, helping people find their own purpose, I would hope that that would be a legacy I would leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then being an advocate for people who need advocates, being a voice for them. And so that's it's so from being fearless to being an advocate, I guess that's kind of a odd spectrum, but that's mine. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I love how you've been created. We all talk about your 1 in 34 million. There's only one
Mm,
Vanessa. And you're
yeah.
being that. You're living that every day. You're energized. Even though life throws you curveballs, you bounce
Hmm.
back. But you've surrounded yourself with your board of directors of people that's followed you around and in your family. And I think there's a lot of lessons here for those listening about how to create that and
Yeah.
how to lean into your strengths and how to keep moving even though when things seem tough, and then how to take those risks when the opportunity comes.
True.
You were ready. When the opportunity comes, you want to be ready, and you were
Want to
ready
be
both
ready.
times. So congratulations. Well, is there anything that I didn't get to ask you today as we close out that you want to share? Anything on your mind as you think about all the people out there in this situation we're still kind of in? We're kind of coming out of
Yeah.
COVID a little bit. We're still, but then just work, home life, being a leader, being a mom,
Yeah.
all the challenges that are out there with your people and people in your sphere. What would you like to share?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, I guess it always goes back to your strengths, but as a brand builder, I've had the, I have had this amazing career of being able to identify an organization's mission and core values and put those on paper and then articulate what that sounds like and what that looks like and how you express it in TV commercials and on a, within a brand guideline. And I think in all of that work, it became clear to me that I had to work on my own brand. And I
Mhm.
would say that no matter where you are on your journey, I think COVID and this pandemic has been a moment that has forced us uh, physically into confinement, and also has forced us to take stock of ourselves, our
Mhm.
strengths, which is a perfect
Mhm.
time to have this journal come out.
Mhm.
And take stock of the resources we have around us, because the reality is we've been forced to have some introspection. If we think truly about,
Mhm.
what that looks like, people have had financial crisis, people have had children virtual school learning and having to try to really wrap our minds around what our children are learning in school. And there's just been a lot more uh, information that's been close to home that we've been able to synthesize to where now maybe is a great time for everyone to build their own brand. What is your core mission? What are your foundational values? What are your strengths? And then how do you want to articulate that and then be consistent? Because one thing as a brand manager I learned is brand is the art of consistency. If you tell the same story with the same logo and the same colors and the same look and feel consistently, people will recognize that corporate brand. And so too is that for people. If you're consistent in your approach to how you communicate with people, how you collaborate, the work product that you put out, how you balance that quote, right? Because no one really balances your home sphere and your professional sphere, and whether or not you bring those two closer together, like I've had the opportunity of doing, where my professional sphere knows of my personal sphere, right? That's becoming your brand once you really have a good understanding of all of those things that you're made up of. And then knowing your brand helps you, I think, to get to your next phase on your journey in a more purposeful way. And I do think that that's when those opportunities start coming to you and things start aligning a little bit more clearly. Once you've been able to articulate for yourself what your brand is about, therefore what your purpose is, then you can be more purposeful.
I love that. Vanessa, you epitomize that whole philosophy of making every moment matter. I mean, I see that, but I also love the part that I see because when I was at your home during Christmas or dropped by in December,
Yeah.
it was hard because both her nurses had gotten COVID and
Yep.
you and
Yep.
Mike were trying, and your
It's
mom were
hard.
trying to manage all of that. But I love the fact that, and I want to show this with positivity because positivity, yeah, you get through things, but yet it's also okay to say, I'm having a rough day today.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
okay. And I love that about you because you were saying, it's not been easy. This has been a little
It's hard.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found, and maybe this is the feminist in me, but I found that there's always this picture perfect image of women and mothers, and we're super moms and we can balance that god awful word. And I'm the first to tell people, I drop balls all the time. Like, it is not easy. It is not easy. And being positive doesn't mean it's Pollyanna. I can't
Right.
see it. My little girl's about to have hip surgery on April 8th. I'm
Oh
scared. And
no.
I tell anyone, I'm scared. My little girl's going to be in a surgery that she's going to be in a cast, a full body cast. I don't know how we're going to lift her. We have to get a lift for the room. Like, the reality is life is hard for everyone. People are out of work, right? People have special needs kids. People are trying to virtual school their kids. We've got, aging women who find it difficult, young women who find it difficult. And the reality is that the more we can approach those topics honestly and realize that we're all going to survive it anyways,
Yeah.
then I think it's a little bit easier to see it as an opportunity for positivity, connection, and supporting each other and being there for one another. And so I'm the first to say it's not easy. My life is not
Yeah.
easy. Most people's lives are not easy.
Right.
But I'm so grateful and blessed every day for every opportunity I have.
Wow. Well, I didn't know that about Ella. We will be praying for
Mm.
her. Oh my goodness. But it was always something, right? That was coming up, whether it was hip
Always
surgery
something.
or back in the hospital or whatever. But
Yeah.
I love how you have navigated life through that and found
Yeah.
ways to get the energy through your sources of energy with your loved
Yes.
ones and people around you and making and asking for help, as you said. So that's great.
Yes.
And I also love your positivity and your realism. So
Hmm.
that's the definition
Yes.
of it's like the Stockdale paradox. It's, how do you balance both so that you can
Yeah.
be resilient? And I think that's what's going to come. We don't know what the name of this chapter is going to be until a long time from now, but resiliency is what I think of when I
Resiliency.
think of you, and all
Thank
that you've
you. I
done and
like
all
that.
that you're doing and how you're pouring out to so many and your family at the same time. So you've been such a blessing to us today. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here and for
you.
sharing your life and talking about all the fun and the challenges and how you stepped in faith and fear and made things happen. So I know you're encouraging all those out there that are thinking about steps they were thinking about taking but not sure how.
Yeah. Well,
So
jump
thank you.
in. Yes. Thank
Just
you. Thank you.
thank you.
I
Okay.
love the journal. I just had to
Well,
end with
good.
saying I love the journal. It's been a real great
Good.
resource for me. Yeah. Every day. So,
Good. Good. Good.
yay.